Hello, this is Joaquin Rui from Que Auto Compro, and today we have the pleasure of having with us Steve Kosowski of Kia North America to explore the first 100% dedicated battery electric Kia model, the EV6.
We're really proud of this car. This is Kia's first dedicated EV, meaning that there's no gasoline or plug-in hybrid or hybrid variant on it. This car rides on our new eGMP platform, which is entirely engineered around the battery to be a battery electric vehicle. Now, what's great about this car, it brings to market first a very bold, expressive design statement. We're very proud of this. It's original. It's unlike anything consumers or the market's ever seen, and we're really proud of it. At the front of the car, what's obvious is a fairly aggressive headlight design, but more importantly is a new execution of Kia's Tiger Nose grille, which feels and looks a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. Also, what's important, because it is an EV, is to have a relatively small frontal area. That's very important for aerodynamics, which is very important for range. And so you also see a relaxed hood line to improve aerodynamic efficiency. This is a GT line, so the GT line has a little bit different front fascia design comparing to the Wind and the Light, which is unique to this car. There's some body color elements on the side, and we're also up here, so we'll talk very briefly about the radar, which is important for all of our ADAS equipment, and then behind the windscreen, just in front of the rearview mirror, are some cameras, which are also important.
Now, talking about the new iteration of the Tiger Nose grille, I notice it's completely straight. There's none of the, it starts wide and then it narrows that we've seen on the gas engine car. So we're going to see different iterations of the Tiger Nose for the dedicated electrics versus the ones that still have an internal combustion engine?
Well, we shall see. But, you know, our design chief, Karim Habib, and our designers around the world, they're always looking to advance design and progress design, so there may be different iterations in the future.
Looking at the side of the car, I'm going to bring up, well, first of all, I want to commend you on the fact that it is such a clean, simple design, almost a throwback to the 90s and the early 2000s, where you don't have all the hash marks and the sculpturing and all that. It is nice, clean, simple, and very attractive.
You know, the surfaces and the proportions and the shapes and forms have really been oriented around which is what you described, which is clean and simple, but at the same time very advanced and progressive. It does have a futuristic look and feel to it, especially as you move to the rear of the car. Things like the section of the car, this crisp line, the way the car sits on the wheels, the proportions, right? This long wheelbase, short overhang proportion gives a really unique aesthetic, which we think is something that's key to bringing a brand new EV to market. And what I get to, Joaquin, is, you know, this car rides on a 114.2-inch wheelbase, which is the same as a Telluride, but yet the overall length is about 184.3 inches. So that's about the same length as a Forte. And it gives this aesthetic, this proportion that is really exciting and very dynamic to look at.
I have a question that is a bit of an elephant in the room. There's a tendency to call this a crossover, yet it's, if you compare some of its rivals, the overall height is closer to the ones that the electric cars that admit to being hatchbacks, like the ancient Nissan Leaf and the Volkswagen ID.3 that's not available in North America. The height is closer to that than it is to a crossover, and I believe it's a good 3 inches lower than the Ioniq 5.
Yeah.
So Is it like a dirty word? Can't we just call it what it is, a hatchback, supposed to a crossover?
You know, the thing about this car that's kind of interesting and unique is there are a lot of attributes from a lot of different kinds of cars. It does have the ground clearance at 6.3 inches, which is similar to other CUVs. The ground clearance is actually higher than that of a Mach-E. It does have the wheel and tire OD on certain variations of the car. You know, this is black. And it's intended to give a little bit of SUV-ness. Yeah. And it does have the hip point, right, which is good for ingress and egress, and it is a crossover characteristic. But in some sense, the car is in its own category because it has elements of sedans, it has elements of hatchback, it has elements of crossover. In the end, it's a really unique and great combination of these attributes that we think, you know, you can call it a crossover, you can call it what you want, but
I'll call it a hatchback.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Okay, now as we keep exploring the side, like you said, the fact that in the GT line you've got the monochromatic side without the cladding makes it look again more hatchback. And then back here it's interesting that first the diagonal cut line that you see here for the hood is echoed in the rear light. And then when you see this like rounded curve, like an imaginary continuous line, the only other car I've ever seen that does that is the third generation Lexus IS, but the execution here I think is a lot better.
Thank you, Joaquin. You pointed out something, one of the design elements I think that's interesting on this car is the harmony between the cut line for the hood, the A-pillar rake, the shape of the back part of the DLO, and then the taillight graphic we refer to as the halo signature taillight graphic, and that wraps down into this character line or this form that really helps anchor at least the side section of the design of the car, but it's very observant.
Let's have, speaking of the rear, let's have a look. You have these very slim taillights.
All LED, by the way.
And the charge port is cleverly hidden here. And I'm of two minds of this on this cut line. On the other hand, on one hand, it's like, well, why didn't you make it like the other one, a single piece? But at the same time, it's drawn nice and parallel, and it makes it obvious which is the charge port.
We're really proud of the rear end design and styling. It is totally original. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. It's anchored by this halo light graphic, and then also it isn't really obtrusive or busy in any sense. It's very clean and it's very sexy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's really cool, we think, is when you look at the car and you see the fender forms, the haunches over the rear wheels, it gives it a really sexy appeal.
Another clever detail that I noticed is the backup lights down here follow the triangular sort of Formula One safety car look we've seen in other vehicles, but drawn as thin horizontal light elements. I think it's very clever, very well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
And maybe we should look at the extremes, you know, the hood and the trunk, and then we'll delve into the interior.
Sounds good. Well, while we're back here, there's a couple of other little interesting details that are worth noting.
Go ahead.
So as we know with EVs, aerodynamics are really, really important. So firstly, how the air goes under the car. So this car has a full belly pan, bumper to bumper, so the air is very clean and there's no turbulence underneath it. And then of course, how the air goes over the car. At the same time, you do want to, enable some kind of downforce without creating a lot of drag. And you'll notice that there's two spoilers on this car. There's a roof spoiler, and then there's a very nicely integrated lip spoiler.
Right.
But in the roof spoiler, there's an opening here to allow some of the air through. So you get a little bit of downforce up here, and you get a little bit of downforce back here, which is helpful.
Do you happen to know what the coefficient of drag is, now that you mentioned it?
Yeah, it is 0.29, yeah, which is respectable.
Right.
And also, since we're back here, we can talk about there's some courtesy lights that are built into this. So when you hit the remote, a little welcoming light comes down. And again, the attention to detail, you know, like the wheel design and the efforts to reduce turbulence as the air comes off the side of the car, very important for reducing drag.
Which of Kia's multiple design studios throughout the world had a hand in this, and who did it primarily?
Yeah, so principally the car was designed in the Namyang studio, but it was shaped and influenced by studios in Irvine, California and Frankfurt, Germany. So, you know, a lot of Kia's designs, they will principally be designed and drawn in one studio, but it is really a collaborative effort, and we're very proud of it. So inside the trunk, there's 24 cubic feet of space above the what we call the luggage board. If you fold the seats flat, you'll have 53 cubic feet of space. And Joaquin, you mentioned earlier about the crossover SUV hatchbackiness of this. And you know, utility is a desirable attribute in the market, and this car brings real function and utility, useful. And then of course it has the power.
And lurking down here is the tire mobility kit.
That's right. And there's another important device in here, if I may.
Sure.
There is a what we call the onboard power generator. And every EV6 with the 77.4 battery, kilowatt hour battery, comes with this device. And what you can do with this is you would plug this in here. This is the charge port for the car. That's your level 2, and then down here, those are the pins for the ultra fast DC charging right here. But the cool thing about this is you can plug this in, and then you can, inside here, you can plug stuff into the car. So if you want to go camping or tailgating, or there's a power outage at your house and you want to plug the fridge in, or a space heater or an air conditioner or whatever, you can plug this in and you can power stuff in the house if there's a power outage, and then you again can power your campsite or tailgating and things like that. This is a really useful and thoughtful thing that comes with the car. And then so once this is removed, you just close the charge port door and nice and clean again.
Now I know with electric vehicles you have a plethora of numbers and charging time. Are you going to use 400 watt, 800 watt, 240 volts? So I don't naturally expect you to memorize all those numbers, but what are the most pertinent ones that our clientele should know?
Right, so in the public space, if you do use an ultra high speed charger, it would add 217 miles in about 18 minutes. That's really important. There's a lot of, I guess we'll call them ordinary DC chargers, 150 kW. That charging event will probably be about 45 minutes, maybe 35, 45 minutes. And then when you charge at home, if you charge at home on a 40 amp level 2 charger, it's about 8 hours to charge the car from empty to full.
Now, surprised to hear that the charging time is actually potentially faster than Tesla superchargers if you use the right charger, and the Guinness Book of World Records has recognized this. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So the car runs on an 800 volt architecture, and that fact enables us to recharge at incredible speeds, as you described. And so the fact is, this car actually charges faster than a Model Y will on a Tesla supercharger, and this is within 15-minute increments into 80% increments, things like that. Now, because of that, the company set a Guinness world record on a drive from New York to California, and then of course California back to New York. And it's the shortest charging period, the shortest charging time on a cross-country drive, which is remarkable. This car, the presumption is that you have a home charger, and you know, 99% of your charging is going to be done at home on a home charger, a level 2, or in the public space on a level 2 or DC charger.
Wow, okay, interesting. Because I'm used to having, you know, the long plugs,
Yeah.
and like when I had BEVs to try out, I just plug them in 110, and I know I have to leave them overnight, and it takes forever. But.
Yeah, and that's an important point, Joaquin, because you know this is a huge battery. It's a 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery, and it's neatly tucked under the car. You wouldn't really know it was there if I didn't tell you. But it does take a long time to charge on 120 volt or 110 volt. Right. It takes a long time.
If you could run us briefly through the different variants you can get, I believe there's like 2 different battery strengths, rear wheel drive, all wheel drive.
Sure,
if you could walk us through that.
Sure, that's right. So the entry-level car is called the Wind, and that car comes to market with a 58 kilowatt-hour battery. It has a 232-mile all-electric range, about 167 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque. It's a fun car to drive.
And I believe it's exclusively rear-wheel drive.
That's right, exclusively rear-wheel drive. There's no other all-wheel drive variant on that configuration. Right above that is the Wind, and the Wind is the 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery car, available in rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, and it adds lots of different content. The wheels are slightly different, and then there's an all-wheel drive variant as well, which it offers 320 horsepower and 446 pound-feet of torque.
And I believe GT-Line variants correspond to the Wind with, I guess, a bit more equipment or slightly different equipment.
That's exactly right. You will get, with the GT-Line, you get the different exterior look, the monochromatic forms, and the wheel is actually, the little pockets in the wheels are slightly different. And the interior is different, and there's a lot of other different features on the car, like the sunroof. It has a wide sunroof, augmented reality heads-up display.
Since GT-Line sounds like it has sporting pretensions, any tweaks to the suspension or steering settings?
There are some specific little tuning tweaks in terms of maybe damping and how the steering feels, and maybe even spring rates and bushings and things like that. Yeah, it definitely drives and feels different.
Right. And what can you tell us about the GT, which I understand is way more powerful than anything that we've discussed so far?
So we have teased the GT. We've shown it in some videos, and it brings to market 576 horsepower. We've said 0 to 60 in the low to mid 3-second range. Wow. Which is incredible. Yes. I mean, it really exudes the potential of battery electric vehicles and our engineering, our EV engineering competency. So we're looking forward to that. You know, we're very proud of the Light and the Wind and the GT line, and this GT is going to be a nice capstone product for us.
Roughly when will we see it?
Probably late this year at the earliest, possibly early next year.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So it's a pretty clean, cool clamshell front hood, which I'm proud of. And a very short front section. And then under here is, it's a little storage compartment, and you know, it's useful for storing some things. You know, like I said, if you were going tailgating or camping or something, you put some items in here.
I like how it looks at a glance like an engine cover for an internal combustion engine. This EV, I think it's cleverly done.
Thank you. Yeah, and it does indicate a nice attention to detail. It's thoughtful, right? And I think that's about it under the hood.
Right. And I guess, you know, some people don't realize that, okay, they think in terms of the batteries that run the car, but you also need a 12-volt battery for certain accessories.
That's right, wipers, radio, things like that.
Well, now let's step inside.
So I think firstly what you notice is the GT line has a different IP instrument panel material and surface. It's unique to this car. The Wind and the Light have a different material. So
And I like this diagonal line that starts here and seems to carry over
good
onto
observation.
the center armrest. I'm guessing that's GT exclusive?
That's right, GT line.
GT line, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's right.
And is this brushed metal also GT line exclusive, or do they all have that?
The Wind and the GT line share this, yes. And the Light is slightly different. And then we have a cell phone charger right here, wireless. You just set the phone on.
I made good use of it, by the way, on
Excellent.
our drive.
Excellent. And then, of course, you have the start button right here. And it brings to life all the cool stuff that's in the instrument panel. Obviously, it has a 24-inch panoramic screen. And you know, one of the things we learned in our consumer research is they really like this layout. You know, there's a lot of different configurations in terms of a tablet this way and a tablet that way, but our customers really like this. So
they prefer the horizontal.
yeah, they really do, and it makes a lot of sense. The other thing too is that this car has a really nice mix of touch sense switches and knobs. I mean, we have temperature knobs here, and then when you're in audio mode, you know, volume knob and things like that, and traditional little buttons and switches here. So
That's something that honestly took me a little getting used to.
yeah,
But basically, hit the fan, you've got the AC. If you want to choose between modes, you hit the little arrow up there.
Right.
You got all that.
right. It's just a handy little control panel, and you know, the audio functions, of course, can be run from the steering wheel as well.
And the flat bottom, I'm guessing, is GT line exclusive?
That's right. That's a GT line characteristic. It adds a sporty flair to it. And while we're here, we can talk about these paddles. If you
Good
look,
question, yes.
yep, behind the wheel, you can see these paddles to paddle up and paddle down. And what those are for are the regen braking. Yep. So when you're driving an EV, it's really helpful to try and capture that kinetic energy that the car has. And so the regen braking turns the motors into generators when you decelerate. And these paddles here, you can use them to increase or decreasing the level of regen braking.
Are they like redundant, or does one paddle increase and one paddle decrease? How does it work exactly?
Yeah, this by clicking this way, by pulling back, it's going to increase regen braking, and by clicking this paddle here, you're going to decrease regen braking.
And there were, I believe, 3 settings plus a 4th one that was like E-matic, I think, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good observation. There's actually zero.
Zero, that's
yeah,
right.
There's
I forgot
4.
about 0.
Yeah, you have 0, which is like coasting, and then 1, 2, and 3. And then the higher the number, the more aggressive it is.
Right.
And then there's iPedal. Let's see if I can put that in iPedal right now. You may have to be driving. But iPedal is one pedal driving. And what we found with EV drivers is for maximum efficiency, if you put it in iPedal and the car's engineered around that, you can just drive with 1 foot on the pedal, on the gas, on the throttle, and you can, as soon as you lift, the regen braking is maximized, and it'll literally bring the car to a stop. And it's effectively the most efficient way to drive the car because it uses that kinetic energy to put energy back in the battery.
Which is the default mode?
Default mode is level 1.
Okay.
Right, and the default mode is normal mode because there's 3 different modes.
Right.
You know, eco, normal, and sport.
Right.
Normal mode and level 1 regen braking.
Okay, and then the drive modes, I think, are changed.
That's right. Very important point. This little button right here at I call it 7 o'clock. As you toggle.
Yeah, that's
right?
where it is.
Right?
Yeah.
As you toggle through, you can see different backgrounds changing on the instrument cluster, and it'll also tell you whether you're in eco, normal, and sport. There's also a snow mode too. If you're in a inclement weather, it's snowing or something, you can put the car in snow mode.
And I'm guessing rear room is like, I'm guessing the back seat is especially comfortable?
It is.
And roomy?
It is. There's lots of room back there, and that's mainly, like I mentioned earlier, this long wheelbase. It gives a very generous second row package. It's very useful, plenty of room.
Okay, so I think we've covered the most salient, relevant points. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
There's a couple little thoughtful details, Joaquin.
Go ahead.
One of them is, as you can see here, there's an ambient light, and this is part of the GT line. And you can change the color of this light. You can link the light to your throttle positioning and drive mode, that kind of thing, which is kind of cool. And then another important thing is if you're familiar with blue light filters, right? We sit in front of screens, the phone,
Right.
all day long, and your eyes get tired.
That's right.
And so our engineers engineered into the screen a blue light filter.
Oh, that's
And-
interesting.
Yeah, it is, and you can change the degree of blue light filtering. You can change it, you can link it to when it's dusk or dawn or something like that. So
Right.
typically at the end of the day, you'd want to engage that. But to me, it's those kinds of little details that signify the thoughtfulness of the engineers and the product development folks behind this car.
Excellent. So thank you for taking the time to share this little tour with us.
You're welcome.
And let me, congratulate you. I think you've put together a great, very interesting product here.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. We're really proud of the car. We think we're making a bold statement. The Kia's plan is to shift, way more significantly into EVs and electrification. This car makes a statement, and it brings to market arguably an unparalleled combination of range, technology, dynamics, performance, ADAS equipment, things like the augmented reality heads-up display, and a lot of the little thoughtful details we just talked about.
You've already unveiled EV6 and teased EV9. Are we going to see all the numbers in between, EV1 through EV9?
I'm not at liberty to talk about future product, but there's a lot to work with there, isn't there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's a good interview. I like that.
Thank you.